Hi and welcome to the second episode of my devlog series. This week there are a number of things I want to focus on, but the first thing I want to get out of the way is I want to make sure that the train is randomly generated every time you play through it, so you don't have to play through the same map every single time. So that's the first thing I want to work on. So the basic idea is to fill an array with all of the train parts and then pick one random part from this array and insert it into the train, and thus randomly generating a train, or at least that's the idea. And once I run out of parts to pick between, I will just refill the array with all of the initial parts again. So the coding part is pretty basic and shouldn't take too long, but the problem I just ran into is that the train parts all have different anchor points, or pivot points if you will, and so I have to change all of them to go to the bottom left so that I can easily chain the train together. Otherwise I will have to do a lot of calculations in the code, and I think just changing the pivot points will make things much easier on my part. So that's really going to be the lengthy process here. But now I'm gonna go and get some exercise done, and hopefully when I come back I'll be able to finish the randomly generated train. So I got everything up and running, and what you're looking at right now is some top secret confidential behind the scenes footage of the train, being randomly created, which is pretty cool. There are still some issues, but for the most part this works, and I will fix those issues along the way, but it's not really a big problem right now. It's just kind of annoying when it happens, but I know why it happens, and it's a pretty easy fix, so I will definitely look into fixing that very soon. So I haven't done anything too interesting in the last couple of days, but I've added a wheel which sometimes rolls across the train parts, which you can see on screen, so just to add a bit more dynamic to the gameplay, I guess. It's kind of boring at the moment, and I want to add a lot more things, and I have a couple of ideas in mind, but for now it's just a boring wheel. And I've also added a bit of a depth of field effect to the background, so I've just blurred some of the images depending on how far away they are, so it kind of looks a bit better and you feel like there's more depth to the game. Even though it's 2D, it looks much better in my opinion. Something weird started happening though while I was just playtesting the game. The AIs would just do some weird stuff, like the final cowboy boss. He would just run off the map and kill himself on the rail track, which didn't really make a whole lot of sense because the final boss isn't really supposed to do that. And I realized why it was happening, because I changed the pivot points of all the train parts. And basically the AI was looking for the middle of the train part so he could kind of run to the middle and shoot from there, but he no longer knew where the middle was because I had changed the pivot point, and so he would just randomly run off the train looking for the middle of the train. Since each of the maps are going to have their own little story, I wanted to implement some sort of dialogue, and I felt that one of the better ways to do that is making cutscenes. This wasn't too hard to implement, and you can see it in action here. Obviously this is not the final product at all, this is just some testing, just dipping my toes into the water, but basically you just add a game object and make it a cutscene object, and then add as many text pro objects as you want to with the text you want to add, and it will basically play all of that text in the cutscene, and the cutscene will last as long as the text is there. So you can see it on screen right now. The cutscene starts, and you can't really move while the cutscene is playing, obviously, and then once the cutscene is over you can move again and blow him up. Good times. But yeah, it looks like absolute trash, but this is obviously not the final version. And you can also add like emotions, I guess, to the scenes. So for example, if I add shake, it's gonna start shaking on the second text. This doesn't quite work yet because I haven't really implemented it properly, so it's a bit weird, but the idea is there. So it's gonna start shaking and it kind of goes out of the screen, but you get what it's supposed to do, and that's what I will be working on implementing as well when I start working more on the cutscenes. I've also been working on implementing a bow, which obviously shoots arrows, which stick to your enemies, which is quite fun. But as you can tell, it doesn't quite work very well yet, but I'm working on it. And I also wanted to add Indians to kind of have like a cowboy versus Indians theme, but it came to my attention that it could be considered racist, which I obviously don't want to have in my game. So if there's any cowboy versus Native American experts out there, I want to know if there's any way I could make this not racist or offensive, or if it's really as offensive as some people say it is, because I live in Europe, so I don't really know how offensive people consider this. Is this a really sensitive topic? Because if it is, I'm just gonna stick to cowboys and leave the Native Americans out. So again, if there's any experts out there, then let me know if there's any way I can do this without being, insensitive, or if I should just stick to cowboys altogether, because I might just have to do that if it's considered insensitive or racist in any way, shape, or form, because that's obviously not very good. But that's really going to be it for this week's episode. I will try and upload weekly as long as I have something to show. Obviously, if 1 week I've got nothing new, then I'm probably not going to make a new episode. But as long as I manage to implement new things, then I will definitely try and upload regularly. That's the plan anyway. So I want to thank everyone who subscribed, watched, or liked and commented the video. That means a lot. And also, if you're interested in getting a bit more involved in a community, I have a Discord where I post GIFs and we just kind of have some general discussions about things, which is fun. So if you're interested, there is a link down below. But yeah, that's going to be it for this week's episode. I want to thank everyone for watching, and I will hopefully catch you guys the next week.